The afternoon sun beat down relentlessly on the small homestead as Zara Valenti clutched her feverish 6-month-old daughter against her chest, tears streaming down her face as she paced the worn wooden floor of her modest cabin. It was 1875 in the Montana Territory, and being a widow with a sick child miles from the nearest town felt like a death sentence. "Hush now, Ellie," Zara whispered, her voice cracking as she pressed her lips to her daughter's burning forehead. "Mama's here, you're going to be just fine." But the baby's labored breathing and the heat radiating from her tiny body told a different story. Zara had tried everything she knew: cool cloths, herbal teas her mother had taught her to brew, prayers whispered in desperation to a God who seemed to have forgotten her existence. Nothing helped. Ellie's condition had worsened steadily over 3 days, and now her little one barely had the strength to cry. A sound outside made Zara freeze. Living alone had taught her to be wary. She clutched Ellie tighter and moved to the window, peering through the dusty glass to see a rider approaching. Her hand moved instinctively to the rifle propped by the door, though she'd be hard-pressed to aim it while holding her child. The stranger dismounted a magnificent chestnut stallion, removing his hat to reveal dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. He approached with his hands visible, clearly sensing her apprehension. "Madam," he called out, "name's Nathan Irwin. My horse threw a shoe about a mile back. Was hoping I might trouble you for some water before I walk him to town." Zara hesitated, but Ellie let out a pained whimper that seemed to make the decision for her. She needed help, and perhaps this stranger was Providence finally answering her prayers. She opened the door, rifle still within reach. "There's water in the well out back," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. The man Nathan took one look at the baby in her arms and the desperation in her eyes, and his expression changed from polite request to concern. "Your little one doesn't look well, madam." Zara's composure crumbled. "She's been sick for days, getting worse. I don't know what to do anymore." Nathan stepped closer, respectful but determined. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the child. Against her better judgment, Zara allowed him to place a calloused hand on Ellie's forehead. His touch was surprisingly gentle for a man who looked like he'd spent his life breaking horses and facing down trouble. "How long has she been like this?" His blue eyes were serious, scanning the baby with careful attention. "The fever started 3 days ago." "She won't nurse properly and she's getting weaker." Zara fought to keep her voice steady. "My husband died last winter. There's no one to fetch a doctor, and I can't leave her to make the journey myself." Nathan Irwin straightened his shoulders, decision made. "I'll find a doctor and stay by your side," he said with such certainty that Zara almost believed him. "There's a town about 15 miles east of here, Timber Creek. They have a physician. But your horse, Samson, will be fine with just me walking him, but I can't take him at speed with a bad shoe. Do you have a mount I could borrow?" Zara nodded toward the small barn. "My mare, she's not fast, but she's steady." "That'll do." Nathan was already moving toward the door. "Get your little one comfortable. I'll be back before nightfall with help if I have to drag the doctor by his collar." "Why would you do this for strangers?" Zara couldn't stop herself from asking. Nathan paused, his expression softening. "My sister lost her boy to fever 2 summers ago. No one should go through that if it can be helped." He settled his hat back on his head. "What's your name, madam?" "Zara Valenti, and this is Ellie." "Well, Miss Valenti, you keep fighting, and little Ellie there needs to hold on. I'll be back faster than you can imagine." With that, he was gone, and Zara heard him in the barn preparing her mare. Minutes later, the sound of hoofbeats pounded away from the homestead, carrying with them her desperate hopes. The hours crawled by like years. Zara bathed Ellie with cool water, sang to her, prayed, and watched the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. The baby's breathing seemed more labored, her tiny chest rising and falling in an uneven rhythm that terrified her mother. "Please, Ellie, please hold on," Zara whispered. "Help is coming." Just as the first purple shadows of dusk began to stretch across the land, Zara heard horses approaching more than one. She rushed to the window to see Nathan returning with an older man who could only be the doctor, and surprisingly, a woman as well. She flung open the door as they dismounted. This is Dr. Henry Calloway, Nathan said, his face drawn with exhaustion but his eyes bright with determination. And his wife, Margaret, she's a midwife and knows more about sick babies than most doctors, by his own admission. The elderly couple moved with practiced efficiency. Dr. Calloway carried a worn leather medical bag while Mrs. Calloway came straight to Zara, arms outstretched. "Let me see the little one, dear," she said gently. Reluctantly, Zara handed over her precious bundle. Mrs. Calloway's experienced hands unwrapped Ellie, examining her with tender precision while her husband prepared his instruments. "Lung fever, I'd wager," Dr. Calloway muttered after listening to Ellie's chest with his stethoscope. "Seen a lot of it this season. Can you help her?" Zara's voice was barely a whisper. "We'll do everything we can," Mrs. Calloway assured her. "This young man here rode into town like the devil himself was chasing him, nearly fell off your mare shouting for Henry, wouldn't take no for an answer." Nathan stood awkwardly by the door, hat in hand. "I should see to the horses," he mumbled, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. For the next hour, the Calloways worked over Ellie. They administered medicines from the doctor's bag, showed Zara how to create a steam tent with a kettle and blanket to ease the baby's breathing, and prepared a tincture that they carefully fed to Ellie drop by drop. "We need to break this fever," Dr. Calloway explained. "And keep her breathing as clear as possible." Outside, Nathan had unsaddled the horses, fed them, and was now bringing in water and firewood without being asked. Zara caught glimpses of him through the window, working steadily in the gathering darkness. By midnight, Mrs. Calloway announced that Ellie's fever seemed to be responding to the medicine. "She's not out of danger yet," she cautioned, "but she's fighting." "We'll stay the night," Dr. Calloway declared. "The child needs watching, and you look dead on your feet, Mrs. Valenti." "Miss," Zara corrected softly. "My husband, he's gone." The doctor nodded in understanding. "Then it's settled. Margaret and I will take shifts with the baby. You get some rest." "I can help too," Nathan spoke from the doorway, startling them all. He'd been so quiet they'd almost forgotten his presence. "I'm used to night watches on the trail." Zara really looked at him for the first time. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, his face weather-beaten but handsome in a rugged way. His eyes held a kindness that contradicted his tough exterior. This stranger had ridden hard to save her daughter, brought back help, and now offered to continue his vigil. "Thank you," she said simply, the words utterly inadequate for what she felt. The night passed in a blur of worry and exhausted half-sleep for Zara. Each time she jolted awake, she found either the Calloways or Nathan sitting vigilantly by Ellie's makeshift cradle, administering medicine or simply watching over her child. Near dawn, Zara awoke to find Nathan alone with Ellie. He was speaking to the baby in a low, gentle voice that Zara had to strain to hear. "You've got to get better, little miss," he was saying. "Your mama needs you, and she's a strong one, your mama. Rode in here ready to take on the world to protect you. That's the kind of mother worth fighting for." Zara's heart constricted at his words. She closed her eyes, not wanting him to know she'd overheard something so personal. When morning finally broke, Ellie's fever had dropped significantly. The baby was weak but taking broth that Mrs. Calloway prepared, and her breathing, while still congested, had lost that terrifying rattle. "She's turning the corner," Dr. Calloway announced after examining her. "Keep up with the medicines I've left you and plenty of fluids. We'll come back in 2 days to check on her." "I don't know how to thank you," Zara said, clutching the doctor's weathered hand, "or how to pay you." "Nathan took care of that," Mrs. Calloway said with a small smile, "insisted on it." Zara turned to Nathan in surprise. He shrugged, looking embarrassed. "Had some money from a cattle drive. Wasn't doing anything important with it." Before Zara could respond, the Calloways were making preparations to leave, promising to return soon and leaving detailed instructions for Ellie's care. As they rode away, Zara found herself alone with Nathan for the first time since he'd galloped off to find help. "You should go," she said reluctantly. "You've done more than enough, and you must have somewhere to be." Nathan shuffled his feet, looking out at the horizon. "Actually, I was thinking I might stay a day or two. Your place could use some repairs before winter sets in." That barn door's hanging by a prayer and there's a hole in your roof that'll let in the first snow. I can't ask you to do that. You didn't ask, I offered. His eyes met hers, steady and honest. Unless you'd rather I didn't. Zara considered her situation alone with a recovering baby, a homestead that was indeed falling into disrepair and winter approaching. Pride warred with practicality. I'd be grateful for the help, she admitted finally. But only if you'll let me feed you properly in return. It's the least I can do. Nathan smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. Deal. One day turned into 3 and 3 into a week. Nathan worked from sunrise to sunset, repairing the barn, patching the roof, chopping enough firewood to last months, and even hunting to fill Zara's nearly empty smokehouse. Each evening, he'd check on Ellie, his large hands impossibly gentle as he felt her forehead or let her grasp his finger in her tiny fist. Ellie improved steadily under Zara's devoted care. The Callaways returned twice, each time pronouncing themselves satisfied with the baby's progress and impressed with Nathan's improvements to the homestead. Zara found herself watching Nathan as he worked, admiring his strength and the quiet competence with which he tackled each task. At night, he slept in the barn despite her offer of the small side room where her husband had once kept his gear. Wouldn't be proper, Nathan had said simply, and Zara had respected his sense of honor. As October gave way to November, bringing with it the first biting winds of the approaching winter, Zara realized she was no longer simply grateful for Nathan's help. She had come to depend on his presence, to look forward to their shared meals and quiet conversations as Ellie slept. One evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Ellie contentedly playing with a wooden horse Nathan had whittled for her, Zara finally asked the question that had been on her mind. "Where were you headed, Nathan, before you stopped here?" He was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he set down his coffee cup. "Nowhere in particular. I've been drifting since the war ended. Worked cattle drives, broke horses, did whatever honest work I could find. The war you fought." Zara tried to imagine him in a blue uniform, marching with Sherman or Grant. 3 years with the 1st Montana Volunteer Cavalry. His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes held shadows. "Came back to find my folks had died of influenza. Farm was sold for taxes. Didn't see much point in settling down after that." "I'm sorry," Zara said softly. Nathan shrugged. "Life happens. What about you? How'd you end up out here alone?" Zara gathered Ellie into her lap, drawing comfort from her daughter's solid warmth. "Thomas and I came west 3 years ago." He had dreams of building a cattle empire. She smiled sadly at the memory. "We started small, too small, really. Last winter he went to buy supplies before the heavy snows. His horse came back without him 2 days later. What happened? Never knew for certain. Found him at the bottom of a ravine. Could have been an accident, could have been robbers." Zara stroked Ellie's soft hair. "I was already carrying Ellie, had nowhere to go back east, so we stayed." Nathan's expression was unreadable in the firelight. "You're a brave woman, Zara Valenti." She shook her head. "Not brave, just stubborn." That drew a genuine laugh from him, a sound she realized she'd rarely heard. "Stubborn's not so bad, gets things done when courage runs out." 2 days later, the first snow fell earlier than usual, blanketing the landscape in pristine white. Nathan had just finished reinforcing the chicken coop when Zara called him in for the midday meal. "Storm's coming," he said, stomping snow from his boots at the door. "A big one by the look of those clouds." Zara felt a flutter of anxiety. Winter storms in Montana territory could last for days, trapping travelers and isolating homesteads until the weather cleared. "You should probably head to town before it hits," she said, though the words cost her. "The trails will be impassable soon." Nathan studied her face for a long moment. "Are you asking me to leave, Zara?" "No," she admitted, "but I won't keep you here out of obligation." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his clothes. "What if it's not obligation that's keeping me here?" Zara's heart hammered in her chest. "Then what is it?" Instead of answering, Nathan gently touched her cheek with calloused fingers. "I think you know." The storm hit that night with full fury, howling winds driving snow against the windows and piling drifts against the doors. Nathan had moved his bedroll into the small side room at Zara's insistence. The barn was simply too cold for anyone to safely weather such a blizzard. The close quarters created an intimacy neither of them had anticipated. They worked together to keep the fire fed, to care for Ellie, to prepare meals from the stores Nathan had helped build up. Each brush of hands, each shared smile, each quiet conversation deepened the connection between them. On the third night of the storm, as Zara rocked Ellie to sleep, she found Nathan watching them with an expression that made her breath catch. "What is it?" she asked softly. "I never thought I'd want this," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "A home, a family. After the war, I convinced myself I wasn't meant for it." Zara carefully laid Ellie in her cradle. "And now I can't imagine riding away when this storm breaks." He crossed the room to stand before her. "I know it hasn't been long, Zara. I know you're still grieving Thomas. But I hope there might be room in your heart for something new." Zara looked up into his face, seeing the vulnerability beneath his strength. This man who had ridden through a dangerous territory to save her child, who had worked tirelessly to secure her home, who had asked for nothing in return, he was offering her his heart. "There is," she whispered. "There has been for weeks now." His kiss was gentle, tentative at first, then filled with a yearning that matched her own. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "I'm not a wealthy man," Nathan said. "I can't promise you an easy life." Zara smiled. "I don't need easy, I just need you." The storm lasted 5 days. By the time the skies cleared, Nathan and Zara had made plans for a future neither had imagined possible weeks earlier. He would stay through the winter, helping to establish the homestead on firmer footing. Come spring, they would begin building a proper cattle operation, starting small but with Nathan's expertise to guide them. As the winter progressed, Ellie grew stronger daily. She began to pull herself up, to babble enthusiastically, to reach for Nathan whenever he entered the room. He took to fatherhood as naturally as he did to everything else, telling Ellie stories of brave horses and far-off places as he cradled her in his strong arms. The Calloways visited when weather permitted, bringing news from town and checking on Ellie's progress. On one such visit in early January, Dr. Calloway pulled Zara aside. "That man of yours asked my permission to court you properly," he said with a twinkle in his eye. "Said since you had no family nearby, I was the closest thing to a father figure he could consult." Zara blushed. "What did you tell him?" "Told him he was the best medicine that ever came to this homestead for both you and the little one." The old doctor squeezed her hand. "Life's short out here, Zara. Grab happiness when it comes your way." 2 weeks later, on a crystal-clear evening with stars blanketing the sky like diamonds, Nathan led Zara outside after Ellie was asleep. He'd been unusually quiet all day, disappearing for hours only to return with a mysterious smile. "I have something to show you," he said, guiding her toward the barn. Inside, he'd cleared a space in the center of the floor and covered it with clean blankets. A small lantern cast a warm glow over the scene. In the middle sat a crude wooden box. "What is this?" Zara asked, kneeling beside it. "Open it." Inside, she found a simple gold band, clearly not new but polished to a shine. "It was my mother's," Nathan explained, kneeling beside her. "The only thing I kept when I left home. I've carried it for years, not knowing why." He took her hand in his. "Now I know, it was waiting for you." Tears filled Zara's eyes as Nathan continued. "I came to your homestead by chance, or maybe providence. Found a woman who taught me that courage isn't just about facing danger, but about facing each day with hope. Found a little girl who showed me what it means to fight for life." His voice grew husky. "Found a family I never knew I was looking for. Nathan, marry me, Zara. Let me be a father to Ellie. Let me build a life with you here." Zara's answer was in her kiss, in the tears that mingled on their cheeks, in the way she pressed herself against him as though afraid he might disappear. They were married by Judge Wilson in Timber Creek on a bright February morning, with the Calloways as witnesses and Ellie dressed in a gown Mrs. Calloway had sewn for the occasion. The baby beamed at Nathan throughout the ceremony, reaching for him when the vows were complete, as if giving her own blessing to the union. Spring came early that year, the snow melting to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the earth. Nathan and Zara worked side by side to plant a larger garden than she'd managed alone, to repair fences, and to begin the process of expanding their small herd with calves purchased from neighboring ranches. In May, as wildflowers carpeted the meadows surrounding their home, Zara shared news that brought tears to Nathan's eyes. They would welcome another child before the year's end. That night, as they lay together in the bed they now shared, Ellie sleeping peacefully in her cradle nearby, Nathan pressed his hand to Zara's still flat stomach. "When I found you and Ellie that day, I thought I was just passing through," he murmured. "Never imagined I was finding my way home." Zara covered his hand with her own. Sometimes the best journeys are the ones we never plan to take. As summer turned to fall, the homestead flourished under their combined efforts. Nathan's knowledge of cattle and horses complemented Zara's skill with gardens and preserving food. The barn was full, the smokehouse stocked, and their small herd growing. Ellie took her first steps, toddling determinedly between her parents with delighted squeals. In October, almost exactly a year after Nathan had first ridden onto their land, their son was born, a healthy, robust boy they named Thomas Henry Irwin, honoring both Zara's first husband and the doctor who had helped save Ellie's life. Nathan held his son with wonder, then gathered Ellie close as well. "My family," he whispered, looking up at Zara with eyes full of gratitude. "My heart." 5 years later, the Irwin Ranch had become one of the most prosperous in the valley. Their herd numbered over 100 head, their fields produced abundant crops, and their home had been expanded to accommodate their growing family, which now included 3-year-old Catherine alongside Ellie and young Thomas. On the anniversary of the day they met, Nathan and Zara made a tradition of sitting on their porch after the children were asleep, watching the stars and remembering. "I think about it sometimes," Zara said, leaning against her husband's solid shoulder. "What if Ellie hadn't gotten sick? What if you hadn't stopped here that day?" Nathan pulled her closer. "I would have found you somehow. Some souls are meant to find each other, no matter what paths they take." Zara smiled, thinking of the desperate young widow she had been and the lonely drifter who had promised to find a doctor and stay by her side. A promise made to strangers that had created a lifetime of love. "I believe that too," she said, and sealed the truth of it with a kiss beneath the vast Montana sky.